to make AI work in more than 40 African languages. This is a brilliant, genuinely African-led initiative which helps people to access AI in the languages that they actually use in their everyday lives. Second, we're investing in Africa's first dedicated public sector AI computer cluster at the University of Cape Town. Too many African researchers are held back by costs and a lack of access, and the hope is that this new hub will give them the computing power to build and train models locally. And third, we're launching the Asia AI for Development Observatory. This is a new network to support responsible AI governance, to protect rights, and to ensure AI reflects the realities of people's lives across the region. All of these initiatives are effectively part of our AI for Development program, launched when we hosted the first of these AI summits back at Bletchley Park 3 years ago, and made in partnership with Canada's International Development Research Centre, and as part of a wider collaboration to coordinate investments with the Gates Foundation, the governments of Germany, Japan, and Sweden, as well as Community Jameel. And as part of our partnership with the GSMA Foundation, we're proud to announce the support to 4 additional startups, and these innovative businesses will harness responsible AI to support the needs of underserved people across Asia and Africa. They include Torn AI in Morocco, which creates voice interfaces to local dialects to help low literacy rural users access digital and financial services through simple spoken interactions. And all of these initiatives will make a real difference to people across the continent of Africa and Asia. But I hope they'll do a bit more than that. Yesterday, I spoke about the choice the world faces, the 2 paths before us, one which sees AI take power and opportunity away from people and sadly divides us, and one that sees AI used as a force for good to solve problems and uplift all of humanity. And the projects I've mentioned, the ones we're going to hear about today, and the many new institutions and coalitions that are now emerging, can help make sure we go down the right path. And that is a path of a safe AI, an inclusive AI, and importantly, an equitable AI for everyone. So let's turn now to our panel, an exceptional group of leaders from across India and Africa. And I'm going to get an introduction to our panel members, and then I'll start with the first question. Very good.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce, joining our Deputy Prime Minister on the stage, we have His Excellency Ambassador Philip Thigo, Special Technology Envoy of the Government of Kenya. We have Dr. Bärbel Kofler, Parliamentary State Secretary to the Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany. We have Shekhar Sivasubramanian, CEO of Wadhwani AI, and Chennai Chair, Director of the Masakani African Languages Hub.
And so to the first question to Philip. So we're beginning to see an attempt, well, we all experience how large language models are affecting our lives on a daily basis. I certainly use I don't use ChatGPT, but I use a secure network which is taking my stuff, because obviously, for obvious reasons, as Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, I had to be a bit careful. But I'm using it to research and, usually really get quickly to a fact that I don't fully understand. So as we move this on to local languages, dialects, and across Africa we've got an estimated 2,000 languages. How do you see AI in local languages shaping the next phase of your country's digital development? Having been to Kenya many times, I can and known the many groups that are there. How does this really work on the ground?
Thank you so much, Right Honourable Prime Minister. I think this moment is so profound, and I don't think you guys are realizing what is happening here. I think the first thing is to understand that we're actually in the age of intelligence, right? So it's not about ICTs or technology. It's about our AI shaping how we live, learn, work, collaborate, and engage. From our point of view, it is a civilizational discussion. The Global South has never lacked intelligence, as we know, right? So what it has lacked is the power to define how that intelligence is recognized, recorded, or transmitted. Because our entire culture's values have been coined in language. The Global South is largely an oral civilization. And so the current models, lacking our language means our civilization are at risk, almost existential, to be extinct. And I think this initiative, in our view, begins to ensure that we are represented in the current age of intelligence, but also our intelligence is part of our global collective history and memory. And so I think, which means then how we engage in this is that now with the capabilities like Masakani, it means that when I get into ChatGPT that you refuse to mention, is that young people in Kenya, who are the #1 users of ChatGPT, by the way, are not only seeking emotional advice or guidance from these models, but then when they engage with these models, it actually also represents their cultures and civilizations. I think for me, that's how it works practically on the ground. First of all, is representation and existence. The second part, of course, is it also works when we have the entire stack. And you mentioned a couple of things around funding the models, but I think it would be interesting to see how we fund the compute, the talent that then influences, develops the data, develops the language, the research and development capability, which I was in Bletchley in the first instance, and that was an amazing initiative because then we need to build research capacity and capability because talent development is the first instance of sovereignty. Then the final point, of course, is the specific use cases and languages, especially in the African context. Again, you say 2,000. So each of the 2,000 are very context specific. Kiswahili and Yoruba are not the same, and neither are the applications in health, in medicines, in even our history and cultures in Africa. So I think that capability, as diverse as it could be, also ensures that our diversity in the African continent is represented in the future models.
I mean, that's wonderful. And the first point you made is really about sort of seeing yourself in this story that the global community is going to be telling in relation to intelligence. And we know that all too often in the past, Africa has been written out of that story. So it's hugely important that African languages, intellect, history over thousands of years is in this storybook. So Shania, tell us then how the Masakani African Languages Hub is addressing these issues and really working it as a tangible, real thing.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. So I think I want to say that I am proud to be representing the Masakane community that started in 2019, wanting to see their own languages represented in the global domain, and they did it by the bootstraps. No one wanted to fund them, and they came together and said, hey, how do I ensure that the language that I speak is captured on digitally? So the Masakane African Language Hub emerges from that community-driven initiative where our main goal is to impact 1 billion Africans through 50 of the most spoken languages with relevant AI tools that will allow for economic growth, health, and social benefit, and also working towards the preservation and also capturing the evolution of African languages. The 2,000 plus are growing, And so then, as Honorable Philip Digo mentioned, the diversity of the languages themselves. Like, I speak Shona, but the Shona I speak in Harare is not the same as the Shona spoken in Mutare. So it's really capturing that diversity and nuance of that work. So what we do with support from the Funding Collaborative and the partners that we have is actually think about enabling the ecosystem through partnerships and grant making. So we specifically focus on 4 pillars of work, which is around data, so expanding and diversifying high quality data. In 2019, there wasn't as much data, but the Masakane community actually started building up that data based from the JW300 Bible dataset that had been created. Secondly, we're also looking at research. So it's important for us to take it on as an ecosystem intervention, where we are looking at developing and refining inclusive AI machine learning models, but also thinking about the tooling that's resourcing there. So what we are working on specifically that is having a benchmark project where we're actually then going to create a relevant African benchmark looking at speech and text, because the current benchmark models out there do not nuance the realities on the African context. And then also looking at innovation. So again, a lot of the questions that we've seen is when you create the data, where does it go? Is it taken up in the market? What's the impact? And so for us, we're actually working, 40% of the funding that we have will go to creating use cases and impacting use cases. And one special mention I want to put forward is actually that we are working on a project called Project ECHO, which means enhancing communications for her opportunities. This is a gender responsive intervention that exists in the context of high gendered inequality on the continent. And what that does is it will provide relevant use cases in African languages that lead to impact on women's economic empowerment and health. And that's a significant part of us recognizing the context we exist in. And then lastly, we really are thinking about sustainability. And right now, we're in a moment where there is resourcing, where there is funding. And we also come from a moment where people were doing it without funding. So we're thinking about institutional capacity building for the African NLP community, which will actually then see businesses coming up from these open source models, people innovating off this data that's created, and sustainability beyond the Masakane community, which has been happening right now, but then this funding allows us to actually have African-led AI, which is built for impact.
Thank you very much. And centres Africa, but also importantly the fundamental inequality and gender issues that sit at the heart not just of Africa, but making sure that women are a big part of this story. Shekhar, bringing India into this and thinking of Wadhwani AI, and we're sitting here in the most populous country on the planet. There are also lots of languages and tremendous diversity, but also innovation and range across this country. Tell us how Wadhwani AI is working at the heart of that innovation here in India.
Thank you. First, the work we do is applied AI, which means we solve for problems in health, education, and agriculture. And we've been doing it for the last 7 years. The moment you work in India, the very first design principle that you start with is the ability to be all-inclusive and embrace the entire population. So the dimensions of population you're looking at are language. So you start with at least 14 to 16 languages. You don't even think of an application otherwise. Second, you also think of complete inclusivity, which means you need to think through the divide between rural and urban, the kinds of applications that will be delivered to people which will be of use to them. Third, our applications fundamentally must be useful to people. Then they open out their ability to learn languages, changes that better interface with technology that can actually be of use to them. So that utility value sits at the heart of everything that we do, which drives a lot of behavior, both by us as well as the ecosystem. Just as an example, we do media disease surveillance. We've been doing it for a while, which picks up every article published in India. It runs 4 hours and it picks events of interest in health across 16 languages. And it's been running for the last 2.5 to 3 years. It uses AI and it tells you in this region, this many people got this disease at this time. It runs every 4 hours and it tells the central government, if it's a disease outbreak, what should you do? Another completely different example. We collect data from children in a couple of states, and that will expand to 14 to 16 states, where we have the largest data set of spoken local language, and which, again, in of itself of no use, but when you provide something called oral reading fluency, which assists the poorest child to read a paragraph, and the AI tells you what you read well, what you did not read well, and assists the teacher to cohortize the students and provide them insights. Suddenly, the language and the application, you cannot distinguish between them. It is very important in human contexts to provide some value to the person in any interchange. If you can work the value, then the adoption is easy. If you divorce the two, people don't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. It looks like an encumbrance. So for us, at the heart of our innovation is what does it mean for the person? Independent of which, we do analysis on various languages. We've done one on Tibetan, where we've preserved their entire culture by we worked in Dharmashala as well as in Karnataka. We digitized their entire library system and allowed the communities there to gain employment using it. Likewise, we plan to work on multiple less used languages pan-India. We believe, it's our position that and we've got AgriVani, HealthVani, everything that we do is multilingual. Everything that we do collects data. We have the largest data sets now, incidentally, of the work we do. It's not what we do. It comes as a byproduct of the work that we do. Over a period of time, it is my considered and humble opinion that these models using AI will take time. We should be ready to ride this for a period of time. We should be ready to invest in deep research and or very utilitarian based approaches so that you can take the community along with you. That is super important. The theory is interesting, the practice is different. There is a theory as to how to design roads in India. I will keep quiet after that.
Very, very good example. Obviously, I talked about the UK as a donor country doing this in partnership with others, Canada, Sweden, but also the German government, and we're joined by Barbel Koffler, just to bring the donor perspective really to this and why this is so important.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you. Oh, it's not on? What did I do? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I should put it on first, that's true, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. I wouldn't talk, if it's coming to AI, in a manner of donor and recipient, because at the end of the day, I think it's a new technology where we all have to bridge if we really want to make it useful for everybody. And that's also our interest, of course, from the German side. We see that AI can only be really the game changer to overcome inequality, to fulfill the promises of the SDG. And that's for every country important, not only for Global North or Global South, that's important for everybody. Can only be that game changer if it is inclusive. That starts with data at the end of the day and how biased data is. And if we talk about bias and data, language is quite close to it. You were pointing out how important it is and how you differently speak in various variations of your language. I really understand that. I don't speak standard German normally, so I also use a dialect, and that's quite different from Hamburg. So we all have something to include also, which is connected with a cultural momentum. And we see so many languages neglected, totally neglected, dialects, cultures, because it's not only the language, it's what the language is transporting also, which is neglected. And that's why we really try to be part, and we're very proud to be part of your initiative also, We were starting in 2019 with discussing those topics, working on an initiative called Fair Forward. That's part of the initiative. And working also with partner countries like India on collecting data sets, so really to collect the necessary data on those local languages, which at the end of the day is offering then, or should offer service to citizens in their mother tongue in multilingual countries or contexts, for example. So for us, it's of utmost importance. Happy to be part of the initiative. We want to stay a reliable partner on that, and we will be part of that initiative. And I hope the idea is spreading and growing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now have a small changeover in our panelists. If I could ask, if we could have another big round of applause, please, for His Excellency Philip Figo, Deborah Koffler, and Shekhar Sivasubramanian. And now joining us on stage, we will have Ankur Vora, Chief Strategy Officer and President of the Africa and India Office at the Gates Foundation. Julie Delahanty, President of Canada's International Development Research Centre. And Natasha Crampton, Chief Responsible AI Officer at Microsoft.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Back to Chennai. My understanding is that Masakani are announcing a new multi-million pound partner, or an open call today, for Lingua Africa. So can you tell us a little bit more about this initiative and the gap that it's designed to close effectively, and then why this moment is so important for African languages as a whole and AI?
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. So yes, I do have the honor with my esteemed panelists to actually announce Lingua Africa. So with Masakane, which I've said means to build together, we've been working with researchers and communities across the continent to close the gap in how African languages are represented in the AI systems. What we've constantly seen is that, and I think I did mention this, is that it's not just about data, it's about whether the language resources actually translate into tools people can use, particularly in healthcare, education, agriculture, and public services, because those are the developmental domains that we're likely to have significant impact with. So together with Microsoft AI for Good and the Gates Foundation, we, as well as our AI4D partners, Lingua Africa will be a multi-partner open call focused on open community-governed language infrastructure, which will directly enable real-world AI applications. I think a lot of the times as we're developing AI solutions, the question becomes, if we're building them in a lab, will they work in the real world? And that's also consistently part of what we're doing with the benchmarking work. So how we'll do this is actually then it'll be a use case or impact-focused specific approach, where we will do model development, we will collect targeted data in those specific domains, and then also support strong pathways for deployment and adoption. So this is us working with multiple entities, the academic community, our partners here on stage with us, but also the tech entrepreneurs who are actually building up these solutions. And then for us, it's quite simple. The goal is to make sure that language is not a barrier anymore into including and people into these solutions, particularly if you think about digital public infrastructure interventions. They need to be in languages that people communicate with, because you will leave behind a majority of people if they are in languages that they do not understand. So that is our most significant contribution right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And obviously we're very pleased in the UK to be partnering with the Gates Foundation on new support for linguistic diversity across AI. But just explain, Ankur, the role that the hub has effectively in that wider impact on the global south?
Right. This is on? Yeah, it's on. All right. Languages matter. Can you first join me in giving a big round of applause to Chennai for this amazing movement with Masakan? It is kind of brilliant where we are in this moment in time. Let me talk about 3 whys. One is why care about language. The second is why care about investing in language. And the third one is why care about investing in initiatives like Masakane. The first one, I think so everybody knows, but it's useful to repeat it. And many people have talked about this before. Because we want to make sure that the power of AI actually changes lives. History is not going to remember us for the models we developed or the speeches we give here. History is going to remember the impact we all had. We're talking about mothers and babies not dying. We're talking about the next generation growing up in a world without infectious diseases. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people escaping the clutches of poverty. Those kind of things matter. And the solutions are there. They can get better, but we need to find a way of these solutions getting translated for these use cases. So that's why we need to care about this thing. Why invest in language? Because the markets are broken. The markets are broken. Private sector companies are investing in models developed in English and Mandarin. And it makes sense for the markets to do that because that's where the economics work. But just because the economics don't work for the small resource languages doesn't mean that we shouldn't be investing in this. And that's the point why all of us need to get together and say, we need to do something about it. When markets are broken, funders can get together and invest in public goods. And that's what we all are doing right now. UK government, Canadian government, the Japanese, Microsoft, IDRC, everybody is getting together and making the point that we need to invest in public goods because these markets are broken and this is an important thing. And so I'm quite excited about the fact that we're all sitting at this panel, people in this audience, and saying we're going to make sure that as we think about tomorrow, the important thing of developing solutions in the right languages that can solve the problems we care about will be a problem that we will tackle. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got to say, as a politician, I like the idea that the state intervenes and doesn't just leave it to the marketplace to determine where to put the funds, I've got to say. But obviously, we are, and you have to, in terms of the innovation, work at the cutting edge, and that cutting edge is most often in the private sector as well, taking those risks to develop and innovate. And here, Microsoft and cloud computing is hugely important. Natasha, and it's important to understand that interaction between the cloud, the Masakane hub, as it has been described so well by Chennai, and how important it is that computation and cloud technology helps the innovation of these local languages. Could you say a little bit more about that? But there is another subset to this, which is getting the balance right so that the languages and often the communities that we're supporting that are at the front line have equity in this and don't lose their own sovereign capabilities, which has been a theme of this conference. So I wonder if you could just reflect on that as well.
Absolutely. So we're here in India, where it's been clear that the Indian government has chosen to put supporting the global diffusion of AI, in particular to the global south, at the very centre of its agenda. And from Microsoft's point of view, from the data that we can see, this is an urgent priority. Our own analysis shows that we have AI diffusing in the global north at roughly double the rate that we have it diffusing in the global south at the current time. And that is exactly why we need partnerships like these in order to start to put the right infrastructure in place to close that gap. Now, language is particularly important in terms of overcoming that AI divide. As we've heard many speakers say today, nobody is going to use AI if it does not speak the language that you speak, and importantly, that it does not work in the context, in the specific scenario in which you need to use it. So language aware and scenario aware AI is incredibly important to empowering people to put the technology to work in the use cases that mean the most to them. And that's why we're so thrilled to be partnering with Masakane as well as the Gates Foundation, the UK government on this Lingua Africa initiative. So how does compute come into all of this? I think quite simply, compute is the enabler of making language and culturally aware AI. It's a critical component of it. So when we take a base model that may have just been trained, like most models, on data sets that are predominantly English, we need to make sure that we can do this responsibly, locally led data collection that Sinead was talking about earlier. And then we need to do some further work on the models to essentially ingest that data and make it well represented in the model. All of that takes compute. Then it's very important once we've actually made the model linguistically and culturally aware, we need to make sure that we're testing it with local language speakers and in the right scenarios. That testing also takes compute. And then finally, the day-to-day use of this technology, it also requires computing power. So we're really here today as an enabler of an Africa-led effort by Africans, for Africans, to create this linguistically aware and multiculturally aware technology, and compute fundamentally is just the enabler of it. I think my last thought to offer up here today is I think these types of initiatives just really reinforce that trustworthy AI is not going to happen by accident. It's going to happen because of the choices that we make, the ways in which we choose to build and test and deploy these AI systems. And for us at Microsoft, it's really important that we do take all of those steps to represent the world as it is, multicultural, multilingual, and deeply interconnected. So we're thrilled to be part of this initiative.
Thank you very much. And Julie, so we've very much described this journey that we've been on since Bletchley Park, and talked about languages, talked about computing. In a sense, AI, that's a foundation stone for communities. But just to round off this event, how do we see the opportunities going forward? Particularly, where do we need to get to?
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here and for the Deputy Prime Minister for welcoming us. We're incredibly proud at IDRC to be part of the AI4D initiative with the UK government and to be partnering with the Masakane African Language Hub, as well as the African Compute Initiative. And I think going back a little bit to the Microsoft views on it, I think it's very similar for us. Researchers in lower middle income countries really have to have strong computing power to be able to do the kind of cutting edge AI work that Sinead and others are doing. But right now, of course, they do face a lot of barriers. We did a study that showed the incredible increased cost of getting compute capacity, the difference between getting it in Germany and getting it in an African country, the costs are exponentially larger. So that computing cost and how much it is, the local infrastructure that might be limited, the GPUs that are the hardware that's really driving the powers modern AI is also very difficult and hard to access for African countries. So it really makes it difficult for them to fully participate in global AI innovations. The African Compute Initiative is going to change all that, we hope. It is going to be the first dedicated high-performance computing cluster for public institutions in Africa. It'll be based in South Africa at the University of Cape Town. And that initiative is going to include modern GPUs. It's going to have faster and better storage capacity and much faster networking. And it's that kind of computing power that is essential. It's essential for training large AI models. It's essential for testing new ideas more quickly, as you mentioned. And it's been essential and will be essential for things like the Masakani African Language Hub. Both the initiatives that I'm talking about are really responding to the foundational gaps. So whether that's compute capacity or the kinds of representative and robust data sets, both of those things are absolutely necessary. And if you don't have those foundations, then you can't contribute to AI systems. And if you can't contribute to AI systems, then you can't shape the AI system. So it's absolutely critical for Africa's AI innovations to have those foundational elements that exist. And I think the lessons that we're going to learn through a lot of this programming is going to help other regions and other lower resource contexts to do the kind of work. And in terms of the next steps or what the things that we can do with that, I mean, you can imagine some of the obvious things. Some people have already mentioned it, but things like having language services, health services in local languages through mobile apps, having education platforms in local languages, having extension to agricultural workers in their own languages, all of those applications that we'll be able to do as a result of having both compute and the language models are incredibly useful. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let's have another big round of applause for our panel. And we'll now try and do a short group photo with the panelists. If I could ask you to maybe gather here to the side of the stage. Thank you.
We invite Philip and back up and others.
Yes, please. Members from our first panel as well.